Well, hello.
Hey, welcome to our living room.
It is nice to unofficially meet you during a pandemic. I guess you can take whatever you can get, right?
That's right. I'm wearing my house shoes.
There you go. We kicked the kids outside.
We did.
And we're glad to get to spend a little bit of time with you. My name is Derek Jewell. I'm a pastor at Life Church. I lead our new location development team, helping to launch new churches across the United States. And this is my better half, my wife. My bride?
I don't know about that, but my name's Jen, and I get the honor of hosting a faith-fueled conversation-style podcast called The Messy Table. And together we have two kids. 11 and 8. We have Golden Retriever who thinks she's human.
Most of the time.
And?
20, I should say our kids have 20 chickens because it's their deal. They take care of them, sell eggs. Our kids have 20 chickens.
That's right. And then we have a mouse, that we can't seem to catch.
I caught one last week.
I still hear one scurrying around.
His time's coming.
So we are so glad that you're here, and just congrats on your engagement. It's such an exciting time. We definitely believe that outside of your relationship with God, that choosing each other is the greatest decision that you can make. And we do want to thank Colby and Amanda for just starting this online engaged experience. They have such a heart for couples and a passion for marriages, which is awesome. So
we are going to share with you our top 7 tips for a thriving marriage.
That's right.
So let's get started.
Here we go.
Number 1.
Let God be God.
Let God be God. As Christians, of course, we want God to be the center of our relationship. He created the covenant of marriage. It's a covenant before Him. Of course, we want to keep Him at the center of our marriage. But how do we practically do that? Not just during the honeymoon, not just 2 weeks later, but 5 years later, 10 years later. We've been married 14 and a half years. How do you consistently keep Christ at the center?
Right. Well, I think it's important to build that foundation. And again, you probably know that. One thing that's been a big deal for us is, just like we said, let God be God. And so I think I'm a pretty decent wife. He's an amazing husband. He's an incredible dad. But he makes a pretty lousy God, and I make a lousy God. And so if we're looking to the other person to meet every single possible need that we could ever have, I promise you, we're all going to fail, and it's going to be really miserable. And so we really need to lean on God for the things that He is. He is perfect. He is righteous. He is always faithful. He, is never going to fail us. He's never going to grow tired of us ever. And so just leaning on Him for those things. Of course, we need to be in our Bible, going to church, and then also I think getting biblical, practical community around you is a really important thing to live that out.
Doing life with other strong believers. If you're entering this marriage thinking, man, when I get married, my life will be perfect, I'll be happy, I'll have joy, that's just not the way it works. Of course, marriage can bring a ton of happiness and joy, but marriage doesn't solve any problems. If anything, it can magnify some of them. How about, that's kind of a downer, right? But it's true.
It makes you realize how selfish you are.
To have a healthy marriage, both parts have to be healthy, which means you've got to be honoring and serving God in every area of your life individually. You've got to be able to find that hope and joy and peace and identity in Christ individually. And then the thought is that we're serving God each individually. And as we came together in our marriage, we can ultimately do more together for the kingdom than apart. So keep God at the center. The Bible gives us a great example of this, of how to do it. Husbands, I'm going to talk specifically to you. The Bible teaches us that we're supposed to love our bride and serve our bride the way that Christ loved and served the church. Now, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to do that well. Think about what that means. What did Christ do for the church, for us? What did He do? He laid down His life. He put the needs of the church, of us, ahead of His own needs. He loved us sacrificially. And that's the way that we're called by God to love and to serve our brides. That's heavy if you think about it, right? And then the Bible teaches wives, says, wives, submit to your husband. And oh, how so many women get bent out of shape about that word. It's not a negative word at all.
You're called to die.
It's,
so
we're called to lay down my life for you. Yeah. And you're called to lock arms with me and do life.
It's mutual submission.
Together, right? It's mutual submission for sure. So that is not an unhealthy word. It's a great word. Yeah. It's a biblical picture of how it's supposed to look. Think about it. If I'm continually putting her ahead of myself, thinking of her needs ahead of mine, and at the same time She's doing the same thing, putting me above herself. That's the picture
Yeah.
of a great godly marriage. Now, that's not always how it plays out
What?
because we are
I'm
flawed
never hormonal.
human
Ever.
beings. Never. Not that often.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I've
Number one.
I've gotten better.
That's true. Let God be God.
Number 2, communicate
Communicate
and communicate.
and then communicate some more. All right, I want to share a thought with you. So this thought is based on number 1, keep God first,
course.
let God be God. So when He's the center, if you can do these 3 things, you can have a fantastic marriage.
Get
like
ready.
this.
Take some notes.
If you are able to communicate, if you have a plan with money, and if you can have some really good sex. That's right. If you can do those 3 things, I promise you everything else is gravy. So the good news is we're going to talk about all 3 of those.
Let's do it.
Starting with communication. There's so many expectations coming into marriage. There's so much to juggle. You've got to be able to talk, to express emotions, to fight in a healthy way.
That's right.
You've got to be
gonna come up.
able to communicate.
There might be a heated argument every now and then.
A heated argument or 2. It's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. It probably already has, but more is coming. So how can you fight in a healthy way?
So when we were first married, I did not fight in a very healthy way. In fact, it wasn't terrible, but I would run. Like literally, I would put on my running shoes and go for a run. Like, I can't do this, and I just couldn't handle it, and so I would go for a run, or I would get my keys and I'd go for a drive. I would slam the door. I was, and it wasn't even these massive things. One time I did throw a coat, and I think the zipper cut your face.
You don't think it did. She threw her coat at me. The zipper, right
So I
here.
didn't just run, I threw things. It was fine.
Don't do that, please. We're not endorsing any of that.
That's right. But what I learned though was that sometimes you might need to take a little break from a discussion, but really that was not healthy. I need to stay in the fight and talk it out in a healthy way. And again, that doesn't mean that we don't take a break sometimes. That doesn't mean that sometimes we don't come to a place, okay, we're gonna choose to kiss and hug and go to bed in a good place, even though we disagree, and start back the next day.
That's right. So she would want to avoid the conversation or the confrontation, and I would want to engage in it, maybe too much. I had to learn to not fight for victory, to fight to be right, but to fight for...
Yeah, to be right. He was very calm, but he was going to...
She would tell me I was
nitpick
acting
it.
like a lawyer. So right, I had to learn to not fight for victory, but to fight for resolution,
Yeah.
to fight in a healthy way.
And I had to not sweep it under the rug and just, it's fine.
So it's not the question of if you're going to have disagreements. You are. It's life. Life is complicated. There's so many decisions to make. You're not always going to see eye to eye. But if you continually seek God together, He's never going to lead you apart. If you're each seeking Him for clarity, maybe it's on difficult decisions, whatever it may be, continue to seek Him, continue to talk it out, and ultimately you will have a peace that only God can give you on the right direction. If it's a big decision, or maybe it's just a fight, you're hungry, you're tired, and you're fighting about stupid things.
Listen, that's a really good point.
It's a real
Sometimes,
deal.
if you are hungry, if you are tired, any of that,
You just need to get some sleep.
eat.
You just need to
Go to bed. Yeah.
Or have sex, but that's not this point.
We're not there yet.
Then you'll just have to wait. So number 2, communicate.
All right, well, point number 3, going along with communication, talk, don't fight about money.
So this is a complex conversation, right? Most marriages that end in divorce, almost all of them, over 90%, say that finances, money was one of the biggest stressors in their marriage. So it's something that needs to be talked about. You've got to have a plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's right. And the Bible actually says where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's not what we want. We don't want to perish in our marriage.
Absolutely.
That doesn't sound good.
So first and foremost is honor God with the tithe. Now, many people get bent out of shape about this. They hear their church talk about tithing, and maybe they think there's some kind of angle there, or all the church wants is your money. But I'm not asking you to give to a specific church. I'm asking you to be plugged into a local church and to return the tithe first, and then give above and beyond there at that local church. It is a spiritual principle. We talked on number one, let God be God, keeping God at the center. How do you do that? One of the practical ways you do that is in your finances. It's a way that we continually, as a couple to this day, get to make a conscious choice to put God first in a very difficult area to do so, because our heart is connected to our pocketbook, right? And it's hard sometimes to honor God in that way, but it is a continual choice that honestly impacts so many areas of our life, because we take the world and we move it off of center and put God back at the center every time we choose to honor him in our finances.
Well, and it's one of the one places in the Bible where God actually says, test me in this, that I may throw open the floodgates of heaven. And I don't know about you, but, and it doesn't mean that, everything in our life is going to be blessed. But just personally, I know that we have experienced God's faithfulness. And we didn't start out tithing. We started kind of giving just here and there, I think probably the first year of marriage. But then after that, we were like, we're taking this seriously. We even went back and tithed on some things we missed. And
well, in the beginning, we just weren't very intentional about it. But then we realized this is what God's word teaches us to do. And we had made a decision as a couple that we're going to honor God in every area, no matter what it is, no matter if it's our finances, the way we live, everything we do.
An all-in statement is basically what it is.
So this is what God is teaching us to do. So we're going to do it. And man, have we seen God's faithfulness in so many ways. So, but maybe you're thinking, whew, we're getting married. We're covered up in debt. We're just trying to get by, figuring out what that's going to look like. Okay, so start with the tithe. No matter where you're at, start honoring God now. Everybody can participate because it is a percentage, 10% of what we get, what God gives us, we return back to him. Okay, so what do we do from there? You've got to have a budget. People give a budget a bad rap of, I'll be constrained or it's restricting, but it's actually the opposite. Just change your mindset or your perspective on it. Think of it about a spending plan. That sounds a lot more fun, right?
It does, yeah.
But you have to have a plan or you will fight and fight and fight about money, because she's going to buy this, he's going to buy that, then there's not enough left and you're both mad at each other. But the truth is neither of you had a plan. And so what did you expect to happen? So get some great resources. Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, great resources. Every Dollar budgeting tool. We recommend that so much. Have a plan with your money. Be on a budget. Talk about it. I know we entered marriage and we decided in the beginning, I remember having this conversation before we even got married, that we're not going to fight about money in our marriage. We didn't want that. We had seen others do that. And it's not because there's always just been so much money, but it's because we've always had a plan. We've communicated about it, so there wasn't any surprises to fight about.
And I think one bank account is important. Something that he did really well was that he didn't do this whole, well, this is my money and this is your money. He was really intentional. I remember being kind of shocked, but also honored that, if there was something like, oh, well, should I buy that shirt? And what's that look like? And I'm not saying we didn't have to talk through what this looks like. That's kind of the budget that he mentioned. But he did a great job about just saying, this is our money. This is our money. Well, and including me in different things that maybe I wouldn't have been included when we were single. So
so the Bible talks about the two becoming one, right? That's not just sexually and emotionally and coming together, but it's in every area of our life. So honestly, the world would teach you the opposite, but we wanted to entangle ourselves in every way that we could. So it'd be harder to unwind it if we ever wanted to, which of course we don't. And that's why we have tied ourselves together so closely. And you can do that in your finances. So honor God with the tithe, have a plan with a budget, and make sacrifices now. So the way Dave Ramsey says it is, live like nobody else now so you can live and give like nobody else later. We're called to honor God in our finances. We're called to create financial margin so we can help others, so we can be a blessing, so we can grow the kingdom.
And how did we do that at first, when we were first married? We saved.
Absolutely.
We really tried to save my salary. I was in the corporate world and then I was in ministry. And so that was a goal that we had, and that really was helpful to us.
So I've been a pastor for 10 years at Life Church. Before that, I was self-employed. We lived off my income. We saved yours. And then little did we know that a few years after that, we would both be called into ministry in different ways. And having some financial margin allowed us to make that shift into God's calling on our life, into ministry, and do what we do now. So honor God in your finances.
We don't have it all right, so don't think that, but just some things we've learned.
But have a plan.
All right, well, it's the one you've been waiting for.
Number 4.
Keep it spicy. Let's talk about sex, baby.
Oh, here she goes. All right, so we promised you we would talk about it, and most of you, if you're honest, you didn't hear anything about communicating that we said or anything we said about money, because you're like, when are you going to talk about sex? I mean, you're engaged.
Yeah.
You have a date on the calendar. You're ready to go.
Right, let's get to it.
Literally.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, so sex is a beautiful, wonderful, incredible thing.
Wonderful.
That God designed.
Great.
Go ahead.
I'm listening. Go ahead. You were just telling me how much you enjoy sex.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, babe.
Yeah. Oh, you are welcome. So let's talk about it. The truth is that it's probably the thing you have the most anticipation about, but there's the least communication about, right? We've got to be able to talk about sex. We've got to be able to talk about expectations, what you like, what you don't. Not only that, but let's just back up for a moment. All of us have some level of baggage from the past that we bring into a marriage, and you need to talk about that. And I'm not saying in detail, absolutely not, but you need to be open and honest with your fiance about what the past has looked like when it comes to sexually. You need to have that conversation, because where secrets live,
no secrets,
intimacy dies. And so no secrets in any area, especially this area. No details, not helpful, but a high elevation conversation of what the past has looked like, so you can be open and vulnerable with each other moving forward.
For your own heart, I think in so many conversations with people in the church and ministry, friends, ourselves, I just think there's such freedom where there aren't any secrets.
Absolutely.
So if there's something that's weighing on your mind, like I really should have told them that, haven't yet, now is the time. And obviously this is a conversation that I think we need to enter with a lot of grace.
Absolutely.
Because there's a variety of things that people have experienced. Some of it is decisions, some of it is abuse, or some of it is, I don't know what I'm doing. So there's a range.
So yeah, it's a pendulum. You might fall anywhere on that pendulum. But she said a second ago, have the conversation now. Use us as an excuse. Find each other, in the next day or so, and say, hey, remember when Eric and Jen said not to have any secrets? Well, I'm going to step out on a limb here, and I'm going to share something with you that you don't know, and it's going to be hard to do, but do it. And if you're on the receiving end of that conversation, just remember, we serve a God full of grace and mercy and forgiveness, and I don't know about you, but I am so thankful for that. We serve a God who wipes the slate clean. Maybe you haven't honored God with purity in the past, but you can from this point forward. Maybe you're following Christ, but you're not honoring God with purity right now in your relationship. Draw a line in the sand right now and honor God with purity from this moment right now forward until you come together on your wedding night, and from that point forward, honoring God with really great sex.
That's right.
Because it's created by God, but our enemy takes everything that God creates, distorts it in the wrong time, in the wrong way, and uses it to cause harm. So that's enough about the past. Let's talk about the future. Have a great sex life. Have fun. Enjoy each other. Maybe in the past you felt like it's been no, sex is a bad thing, and now you just feel like you're supposed to flip a switch. Yes. Well, a better way to think about it, it was not now, not now, not now, not now. Yes.
What he talked about earlier, if you're ever tired, hungry, maybe you just need to get naked and have sex. Sometimes that fixes things.
Yes. And remembering that you're each other's only legitimate outlet. So really think about that. We talked earlier about serving each other. And that's a way that we can do that. When you're each other's only legitimate outlet, there's no room in our lives as followers of Christ for pornography, for masturbation, obviously for
Unfaithfulness.
unfaithfulness,
Yeah.
of course. There's no room for any of that where each other's only legitimate ally.
Well, I think God designed that so that we come to each other for those needs, and that creates such an intimacy and a trust and a closeness within a marriage, and that's what we're going for.
Absolutely.
So it's awesome. What else you got? What other things?
I think that's it. Do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, he said it earlier, but talk about it. So women, talk about what feels good, what doesn't feel good. I think that often people, get nervous about it and don't want to make it weird. And if I could say one thing, let me just, can I say this?
Listen, I don't. There's no telling what's about to come out of her mouth. I apologize in advance.
Listen, faking an orgasm
She went
does
there.
nobody any favors.
She went there.
It does no favors. So ladies, make him work for it. He likes to work for it. So just
he'll enjoy it.
be honest, be open, have a great time.
There you go. Number 5, set realistic expectations.
Man, do we live in a world where expectations can get distorted? I think especially uncommunicated expectations. So often we can look at Pinterest, or we can look on social media, or we can look at what everybody else is doing around us and think, all right, that's what it's going to be for us. That Christmas card photo, or holidays are going to be perfect, or meals. This is what this is going to look like. Vacations, a normal work day. There's, a billion categories. And often, at least in my experience, especially in the early days, I would have certain things in my head and I would not communicate them. And then I would be frustrated when it didn't go as I planned. And then he would be confused, and then I would be sad, and it was just this dumb cycle.
So you can get in trouble with uncommunicated expectations. Don't expect that of your spouse. They can't read your mind.
Right.
But also with unrealistic expectations, because just because you communicate them doesn't mean they're realistic, right? So, man,
That's true.
You're not going to have sex 3 times a day, every day for the rest of your life. I mean, maybe for a few days on your honeymoon, but yeah,
But you might have to take a break as well.
It's unrealistic. That's what it is. And Chip and Joanna Gaines, everything's going to be white picket fence and shiplap. That's just not the way life works. So,
although we do have a little bit of shiplap in our kitchen.
Yeah, sure, a little bit, not as much as Chip and Joanna.
Right.
But we can all have unrealistic expectations, and we just have to be careful of that. When life doesn't always go our way, there's going to be difficult seasons, and we can't take that out on our spouse.
Right.
We see that so much with different couples that we've invested in over the years, where maybe just the season's hard. They have a young toddler at home driving them nuts, and work's tough, and there's just a lot of external stressors, and they'll turn towards each other, and that's just an easy place to put a lot of blame and to take it out on somebody, and they'll knock heads at each other instead of locking arms together and pushing forward against the world that feels to be attacking or squeezing in on them. So
and oftentimes it comes in silly ways, right? Like it's not always this huge thing. I remember whenever our daughter, our firstborn, was a baby and he had gone back to work, and for that season I was staying at home. I remember him coming home, and all I wanted was for him to take her. I wanted to take a shower. I just wanted a moment alone, and he immediately hugged, kissed us, and then went out and started mowing the grass because it was a mile high, had to be mowed. And I
taking care of the family.
I sound really emotional when I'm telling these stories. I'm not always emotional. But I was, I just needed a moment. And so I had to communicate that because he did not know that. Again, he couldn't read my mind. So it might be in little things, it might be in big things, but communicate your expectations.
And have realistic expectations of your future spouse. Number 6, prioritize your schedules and each other.
Now, right now, this might sound ridiculous, like you're getting married. So, of course, you are showing, I want to prioritize each other. We want to prioritize each other always. Why would we not want to do that? Like, we want to spend all of our time together.
Yeah, it'd just be like a continual honeymoon. That's what you're expecting, right?
Forever.
Probably won't even need to go to work. Probably won't do anything else.
Yeah, just lay around naked all day.
That sounds great, but that's not how it's going to happen.
It's not a realistic expectation.
You have to be super intentional when it comes to your schedule. It's going to take more conversations than you can imagine. We budget our money. We've also got to budget our time.
Yeah, especially as life goes on and you have jobs and life and you had kids and sports and activities and church and different things.
All of the above. Where does the time go? You will end up feeling ragged, running every which direction, just being worn out and living a busy life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But focusing on things that aren't the most important. So you have to be very intentional in this area. Our pastor at Life Church, Pastor Craig Rochelle, he says it like this: we've got to say no to good things to say yes to the best things.
That's
One
right.
of our core values as a church is we give up things we love for things we love even more.
Mm-hmm.
Many of you, you're going to have to learn to say no. Maybe when you were single, you were able to say yes to a lot more things. You have more commitments now to each other. And then you add a family and kids into the story, and you have a lot more commitments. You have to learn to say no.
That's been a lesson for me, for sure.
No
You're better at that
is
than
a
I am.
complete sentence.
Right.
It is. It stands alone.
Always reminding me that.
It doesn't always have to even have an explanation behind it.
That's right.
Right? You can tell somebody that I can't. I already have a commitment. That commitment can literally be
It's to your spouse.
hanging out together,
Yeah.
having a date night, whatever it may be.
Even if
That's
the
a
date night
commitment.
is on the couch watching, Netflix or whatever.
Absolutely. So you've got to prioritize it. I know probably some of the best marriage advice that we ever got was from a guy named Brett, and he said, make sure you plan intentional time alone, an intentional trip alone every year.
Which is my favorite advice ever, because
So-
vacations are my love language.
Hands down, that's her love language.
It doesn't have to be
Vacations.
super fancy. I mean, there have been times, I think we had newborns that we went a town over. It wasn't
Yeah.
super fancy.
Maybe it was just one night.
Yeah.
We
I
stayed.
think just the years that we had newborns, we did that. Other than that,
Yeah.
we've gotten to get
Try to
away.
get away.
Sometimes it's just a couple hours. Other times we've gotten to go to the beach or the mountains. But that has been some of my favorite times. I look forward to it. We reconnect. There's no distractions. There's not dishes in the sink and jobs that we have to deal with. And so
Sure.
truly, and you can get creative. It's not like it has to be super expensive or super fancy. But that is really important to us, is to be able to get away alone together. And again, of course, date night, date in your own hometown and all of that, but for sure getting away.
So a spiritual mentor of mine, he was a pastor for 45 years, incredible man of God. And we don't always do this well, but he recommends to have a family business meeting every week and a date night every week. Again, we don't pull that off.
Not during a pandemic.
Definitely.
We already said this, but we kicked our kids outside
Right.
to do this.
We
so.
strive to. So with that family business meeting, that's maybe sitting down, or even sometimes in passing, it's having a conversation about our budget, about our calendars, taking care of all the business side of our family and of our
Not on a date
relationship. And then that way, when it's a date night, it can just be about us connecting,
Yeah.
having fun. Do new things. When you do new things, you're more vulnerable, and it's an easy way to connect. So keep it fun. Be creative. Maybe you think, hey, you just talked about a budget. How are we going to pull that off? You can pack a picnic and go sit at the park, and it's free or no more expensive than eating at
Right.
home that night. So it doesn't take money. It just takes intentionality
Exactly.
and creativity. So number 6, prioritize your schedule
Yeah.
and each other.
Well, last but not least, number 7, don't quit.
Don't quit, no matter what,
That's right. Ever.
ever.
So we've decided not even to ever use the D word. We don't mention divorce. It's not an option. And we know that as life goes on, that there are going to be some really hard things, some tough things, some difficult seasons. And really, we should expect it. We shouldn't be completely surprised, because even Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so I think we need to rely on that. We need to rely on him. And he's given us a really amazing gift in each other to bear each other's burdens, to walk with each other for a lifetime in so many incredible, joyful, amazing things, and then also for some difficult things as well.
Right. And we've got to remember that it's a covenant, not a contract.
That's right.
A contract is a legally binding agreement that says, hey, if you do this, I'll do this. And a covenant is so much more. A covenant is before God. That we're committed to each other for life.
Yeah.
And many of you, you saw that example in your parents, and they had a great God-honoring marriage, and they're still married. Others of you, you saw divorce, and you saw hurt, and you saw pain, and you're going to be a generation stopper. You're going to draw a line in the sand.
Because you're writing a legacy right
That's
now.
right, absolutely, for your kids and future grandkids. And you get to write that story of honoring God in this area. And there will be tough times. There will be. As Jen just said, I mean, life is full of hurt and pain and
And we
sickness.
have a real enemy. I know that sounds dark and we don't want to bring it up, but
He's out to kill, steal, and destroy everything that's good, and that's your future marriage. That's your family. He wants to destroy it. But he who is in us
is
is
greater
than he who is in the world, right?
Yeah.
So take heart because I have overcome the world. But you got to have that mindset that we're in this for the long haul. And the truth is you're both bringing dysfunction to the relationship. Because
I brought some dysfunction.
we're both dysfunctional. You're both dysfunctional,
Yeah.
right? And so we've got to learn how to work through that. I love the verse that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I used to think of that as like a godly spiritual male mentor in my life. That's what I thought about with that verse. And it seems like kind of a nice, warm, fuzzy verse, but it's not. Iron sharpening iron, there's clanging, there's sparks, there's heat as you reshape that metal. That's what that verse really says. And it wasn't until a few years into our marriage that I realized we're that for each other.
It's some sanctifying work.
Absolutely. But it shifted our perspective because it wasn't, oh, the tension is between us or you're the problem or I'm the problem. It's the truth is we both have rough edges that we need to be more like Christ, and we're so close that those rough edges are more magnified than they've ever been, which is an opportunity to push at each other and then withdraw, or to realize, man, there's areas that I need to continue to improve.
Sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a really great thing.
It's a great thing. It's fun to look back for 14 and a half years and say, I have a better relationship with Christ. I am more like Christ because of our relationship. Still a long way to go, but it can be sanctifying together as you both honor God together. But never quit, never give up. The Bible says that God created the male and female so that man can leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh.
That's right.
And then it says what you hear in almost every wedding.
It's a good one.
Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. Choose to have a covenant for life. Choose to create the expectation and the standard and the example around you to other couples of what it means to be a God-honoring couple. Have mentors in your life that are older that you're looking up to, that are investing in you, and then start, even soon, investing in other couples behind you. That's what we're called to do. Can't wait to see and hear what God does in your marriage.
Thank you for letting us talk to you today. We want you to know that we truly believe in you. More than that, God believes in you, and you got him on your side. So congrats and
congratulations. Have fun.